And I'm Matt Hanna.
And this is Horror Hour with the Hannas,
where we follow Andrew Latis. Oh, that's not his name. Teddy, what's his name? Teddy
Andrew
Daniels.
Latis is his name.
Oh, yeah.
In the wise words of Bodies, today's episode is a podcast about hanging out with your smartest and funniest friend. So we are joined by Alex to discuss Shutter Island. Hi, Alex.
Hi. I love that I'm your smartest, funniest friend. That's a fun fact.
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
Yep, that's
I've
definitely...
never once said that as an intro.
There.
I thought you were saying we're hanging out with Andrew Latis.
What?
As our smartest and funniest.
That
is kind of what this movie is. We're just hanging out with him the whole time.
We're just vibing the whole time.
Yes, we watched Shutter Island.
Shutter Island is a 2010 film directed by Martin Scorsese, written by Leda Kalodridis, based on a novel by Dennis Lehane of the same name. It's starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Mark Ruffalo, Ben Kingsley, and Michelle Williams. So, some fun facts about the actors in this film. Mark Ruffalo earned his role of Chuck Ale after sending Martin Scorsese a fan letter. He sent him a letter and was like, I love you, can I be in one of your movies? And Martin Scorsese was like, yeah, sure.
Marty said come along.
And I love that. Matt also has some fun facts about the actors, so...
Oh, I just think it's cool that there's a bunch of horror icons. By a bunch, I mean 3. But you have Max von Sydow in this as Dr. Naring. Is that how you say his name?
Jeremiah Naring.
And obviously he is the exorcist from The Exorcist, which is our Father Merrin.
Nuts!
You have Ted Levine, or Levin, however you say it, as the warden. That's Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs, which you can hear all of it in his voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then John Carroll Lynch as Deputy Warden McPherson. And this dude has a crazy filmography, but specifically he plays Arthur Lee Allen in Zodiac, who they believe the Zodiac Killer was at the time.
And then
I don't know if they believe that anymore.
He was later in multiple seasons of American Horror Story.
Yes. He has an awesome filmography, and you don't realize.
Super cool.
But he plays a ton of bit parts.
Yeah, I'm a fan. He's the clown in season 4 of American Horror Story. That's like where I first was like, oh, you're terrifying. I hate you. So, some more fun facts is when this came out, it gave Scorsese his highest grossing box office opening to date.
Which is hilarious, because as I said before, it's good, but it's one of his worst films. And it's one of his least favorite of his films.
Yeah, I get it, but also, fuck you. I love this movie. It made $41 million in opening weekend, I believe, and it eventually grossed $294 million. So that was his highest grossing film to date at the time. And what film do you think surpassed both of those?
Wall Street.
Of course it did.
Yeah.
Another Leo movie. We love him.
That makes sense. That's a crowd pleaser.
Alex, have you seen Wolf of Wall Street?
I have not. Fun fact about me, I don't really like movies or horror. So this
Alex
is a perfect podcast for mine.
Perfect guest. We love...
Well, my hope, as I said before
horror.
You watched it, was that the movie would change your life. And that maybe you would like movies now.
We'll see.
Well, no.
No. Not yet. We'll find one someday.
I did like the movie, and I liked the book. But yeah, it was life-changing.
We should say the two of you read the book as well.
Yes, sir, we
in
did.
Preparation. I did not. Because I've been studying for the PE. And I probably wouldn't have read it anyway.
Ha! Nerd!
Yep. That's okay. You can tell me about it.
We will tell you about it.
Don't you worry.
Few more quick facts. This film was shot partially at one of my favorite national parks.
Oh, was it Acadia?
The coastlines were filmed in Acadia National Park.
Very cool.
Which I noticed one of the times, that I watched the movie, I was like, I think I've been there. And then I looked it up and I was like, I have been there. That's crazy. And also, Leonardo DiCaprio is German. His grandparents on his mother's side were German, his mom's German, so he would visit Germany growing up. So it was not that hard for him to do his German lines, because he already knew some German.
Very cool.
Multifaceted actor.
Well, they wanted him to play, what's his name in Inglourious Bastards, right? Wasn't that a thing?
Homie, this is not an Inglourious Bastards episode.
Christoph Waltz's character, because he spoke German, right? Wasn't that a thing?
I have heard that, but
then no one could do it.
No
one, that movie would not have been made if Christoph Waltz didn't exist. So
Christoph Waltz is amazing in that movie. Have you seen that movie, Inglourious Bastards?
No.
It's okay.
I love that.
That would be a weird one for you to have seen. It's very
Yeah,
long.
I wouldn't have expected you to see it, but it also is about the Holocaust, so fun.
Yeah.
Oh, another fact about the actors in this, while Ben Kingsley is not known as a horror actor, he's been in at least 3 films about the Holocaust.
Huh.
Shutter Island, he was in The Diary of Anne Frank, playing Odo Frank, and he was in Schindler's List.
He's very German looking.
Man loves Nazi filmography.
Hold up. Walk that back. Walk that back.
I didn't mean it like that.
Yeah, that is a defamation lawsuit coming your way.
No, I don't mean it like that. I mean he likes an...
Yep, alright, we're gonna move on.
Those stereotypical dads who just love World War II.
There you go.
Yes.
He likes World War II movies.
Supporting anything.
No, he doesn't
loves
support.
it.
He does not support, and I think that's very clear from the films he's been in. He does not support. I would not say that.
We're gonna have to get you some media training, I think. We're gonna have Alex on as your PR agent.
Yeah,
I'll get a buzzer.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
are those all our fun facts?
Do we want to do the summaries before we talk about the book? Because they're the plot's the same.
Sure. I mean, yeah, sure. We can. So
we can start with 15-second summaries.
Don't we usually say what we thought, a little gist of our opinion?
Homeboy.
No, is that out of order?
Who cares?
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna do 15-second summaries.
Are you making me go first?
Of course I am. Okay, ready? Go.
All right, so Martin Scorsese makes a movie about the Holocaust, but it's not exactly about the Holocaust. It's actually based on a book that's also sort of about the Holocaust, but also not at the same time. And he probably has a better ending than in the book. That's all I got.
I agree with a lot of that. Okay, I can go.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
I'll time you. Ready? Go ahead.
Movie about grief. Favorite line, fuck if I know. I have to say that's quite close to my clinical conclusion, and that fits really well with the general plot of the movie.
All right, neither of us did real descriptions. That leaves Alex to have to try to do a real description.
Well, she could say whatever she wants. She could make a joke. Some people have just stuttered and been like, it's gone. All right, are you ready, Alex?
Sure.
3, 2, 1...
A crazy man gets put on a ferry and tricked into thinking that he is a guest on an island when really he has been there for the past 2 years, and he wreaks havoc on everything and everyone. That was not 15 seconds.
That's okay.
But it was accurate. It was, in fact, accurate.
I was calling him a crazy man. Maybe you need a PR agent now. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, I only have 15 seconds.
He does refer to everyone else as crazy, so it does feel applicable. The whole movie, he's like, you people are crazy, and they're like, my man.
But actually, he also loved to say prisoners, and everyone's like, patience. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
All right. So before we start talking about it, I'll give you the full summary. This one's really
the worst part of every episode.
Why is this the worst?
Because I don't.
Don't we need to do it?
Yeah.
We can stop doing it.
No,
this is where I speed read the whole plot of the movie.
It's always funny though.
It's very hard. All right. Here we go. In 1954, U.S. Marshal Edward Teddy Daniels and his new partner Chuck travel to Ashcliffe Hospital for the criminally insane on Shutter Island to investigate the disappearance of Rachel Solando, a patient of the hospital who had previously drowned her 3 children. The staff, led by psychiatrist Dr. John Cawley, appear uncooperative. The marshals learn that Dr. Lester Sheehan, who was treating Solando, had left the island on vacation immediately after Solando disappeared. Teddy experiences migraine headaches, flashbacks of experiences as a U.S. soldier during the liberation of Dachau, and also vivid dreams of his wife Dolores, who was killed in a fire set by arsonist Andrew Latus. Teddy explains to Chuck that he took the case to find Latus, believing he is on the island. Solando suddenly resurfaces and believes Teddy is her husband. Teddy later breaks into the restricted Ward C to find Latus, where he meets patient George Noyce, who appears to know Teddy. He tells Teddy that the doctors experiment on patients and some are taken to the lighthouse to be lobotomized. He warns Teddy that everyone is deceiving him and tells him not to trust Chuck. Teddy regroups with Chuck and they climb the cliffs towards the lighthouse but become separated. Believing he saw Chuck's body on the rocks below, Teddy climbs down but finds only a cave where a woman claiming to be the real Solando is hiding. She states that she's a former psychiatrist who discovered clandestine experiments to develop mind control but was forcibly committed. She says that Cawley and Dr. Nahing will use Teddy's war trauma to feign a psychotic break, allowing them to have him also committed. Teddy returns to the hospital and is greeted by Cawley. When Ted asks about Chuck's whereabouts, Cawley insists that Teddy does not have a partner and that he arrived on the island alone. Convinced Chuck was taken to the lighthouse only to discover Convinced Chuck was taken to the lighthouse, Teddy goes to the lighthouse only to discover Collie is waiting for him. Teddy confronts Collie and reveals his encounter with Solando, saying he believes Collie is experimenting on him. Collie denies that Solando ever existed and insists that Teddy has not been drugged, explaining that the tremors are withdrawals from chloromazepine, a neuroleptic medication that Teddy has been taking for 2 years. Chuck arrives and reveals he is, in fact, Dr. Sheehan. Collie explains that Teddy is Andrew Latis, a U.S. Marshal incarcerated at Ashcliffe for murdering his manic-depressive wife as she drowned their 3 children. Andrew did not seek treatment for Dolores when she burned down their apartment and instead moved his family to a lake house where Dolores carried out the killings. Collie explains that Andrew's delusion is a result of his guilt, that his migraines and hallucinations are withdrawal symptoms, and that he has created the alternate persona of Edward Daniels, also a marshal, who acted violently and espoused conspiracy theories about the facility. The investigation is an elaborate role play to regain his true persona. Overwhelmed by the sudden recall, Andrew faints. Awaking later, Andrew calmly recounts the truth, satisfying the doctors that he is lucid. Collie notes that they had achieved this state 9 months before, but Andrew had quickly regressed. He warns that this will be Andrew's last chance, and if he lapses again, he will be lobotomized due to his very violent conduct towards other patients, and such as Noyce, and towards the guards. Sometime later, Andrew relaxes on the hospital grounds with Sheehan. Appearing delusional, Andrew again refers to Sheehan as Chuck and says they must leave the island. Sheehan signals to Collie, who orders that Andrew be lobotomized. Andrew then asks Sheehan if it would be worse to live as a monster or to die as a good man. The stunned Sheehan calls Andrew Teddy, but the latter does not respond and leaves peacefully with the orderlies for his operation. There are too many names.
I'm just going to throw out there that Matt took German in high school.
What did I say wrong? Naring?
Niring? You also said Dachau wrong.
I thought it was Dachau. Dachau?
No.
Dachau?
It's Dachau.
Why I didn't learn about concentration camps in my German language class, all right?
Maybe you would know how to pronounce German words. I don't know.
I mean, a name and I don't know, neither of them are like words we would use.
I don't know.
Fine.
Sometimes you learn about what sound letters make. It's just a thought.
Nah, I don't know.
Accent, I kept looking at each
so
other
what is it?
What
is it Dachau?
Dachau.
Dachau. What did I say?
Dachau. You're still saying it wrong. Dachau.
What did I say?
Dachau.
Dachau.
There's no cow. No cow.
He's saying it like a parrot.
All right. Well, you try to read that in the speed I did. We cut you out from reading them because you're too slow.
Yeah, I get nervous. That's okay.
Right. It was very fast. I looked down for a moment. I was like, "Oh, he's already at the end."
Yeah,
it's so fast.
Yeah, it's hard. Sometimes I can be faster. The last one I did was very quick, but not this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's talk about the book.
I should first say I've seen this movie a bunch of times.
Oh, so have I.
You have seen it, and Alex, you've never seen it. So this is your first time. And you've read the book a bunch of times, Hannah.
I've read the book twice.
Oh, okay, only twice. I've never read it, and Alex, this is your first time reading the book. Okay. So we'll lay that on the table.
Yeah.
So I'll let you guys talk about the book first, and I'll
This became my favorite movie at age 13 until like age 20 because I'm obsessive, and because it was my favorite movie, I read the book, and I just also have the biggest crush on Leonardo DiCaprio and Mark Ruffalo that's ever existed. So I also managed 2 papers on this film in the course of my academic career because I'm obsessive, as said. So, but yeah, book. I lent it to Alex and was like, you should read this, a thriller. And you did.
You texted me and you said, how can I get you on our podcast? And I was like, well, let's think about this. Because as earlier stated, these are not my favorite things in the world. So we settled on a thriller. And Hannah was like, well, actually, this is a book. Why don't you read it before and then watching the movie, like, you'll know what happened. I said, that's a great idea. So yeah, Hannah lent me the book. I read it so fast. I thought it was such a good book. Yeah, gotta read the movie, watch the movie. Yeah.
So, at what point any point reading the book did you make the connection, like the plot twist?
Absolutely not. Even after the plot twist happened, I finished the book still believing that he was Teddy Daniels. It wasn't until like 20 minutes later I was like, no, that was all a lie, actually. It got me so good.
Yeah, it is really convincing. I think like watching the movie, I could see picking up on it a little faster,
I was
even
gonna ask
though
that.
the hints are the exact same.
Mhm.
The plot is the exact same. Half the dialogue is the exact same.
I mean, you could have figured out the anagrams of the names.
Well, there's a lot more clues in the book
Okay.
that are in the movie. That's like the one of two, I would say, like main differences is that the book has more clues, and so they focus on clues more in the book that aren't in the movie.
Okay.
So, like, there is, like, this code spelled out with rocks.
Mhm.
And, like, he's more focused on solving that. He never gives a fuck about Law 4 or any of
Okay.
that.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I would say there's a lot of visual clues
That's
in the
the
movie,
thing,
which is something
yeah.
that I find very impressive to make, like, translate this from the page to the screen in, I think, a really, like, cool way. A way that makes, like, a lot of sense, which I know everyone says is hard to do, so. But Scorsese's the GOAT, so.
So it tracks.
Yeah.
Did you feel like it was a good film adaptation of the book?
I did. I thought that it held very true to the book and everything that I think the author was trying to convey, like Martin Scorsese was able to do in a really nice way. And I think it was easier to see him kind of fall into like madness in the movie than it was while reading the book.
Mm-hmm.
It also helped that I knew what was happening.
Yeah.
Because the clues, which were exactly the same, were just like, it stood out to me right away watching the movie compared to in the book where like you're looking back, you're like, oh, okay, like that's why they had to give up their guns. That's why they weren't allowed access to like everyone's files.
Yeah.
Things were so monitored.
The clues that they, like, hit you with in the film are actually so, like, blatant, but on first watch, you don't see it at all. Because you can watch, at the very beginning, you can see John Carroll Lynch's character, like, laughing at the fact that Mark Ruffalo can't unholster his gun because he
literally rolls his eyes.
He
doesn't have his, he never lights his own cigarette because he can't have a lighter. So it's always someone else lighting the cigarette for him. Like, it's very clear, like, the patients are all, like, looking at him weird. There's so much happening that's, like, very subtle, but...
I have
like,
a
kinda
list
perfect.
of clues that are in, like, the first 15 minutes.
Okay.
I stopped counting after that, because that would be just excessive.
He's such a good filmmaker.
And some of them are things from the book, like direct quotes from the book. Some of them are more visual cues, like we said. When he's sick on the boat, when you look back at it, you're like, oh, he's going through med withdrawal.
Yep.
He's not seasick, he's withdrawing from his medication.
That's the migraines, too. The migraine
Exactly,
medication
yes.
they give him.
Mark Ruffalo's awkwardness, like we said with the gun. He's like...
His acting.
Yeah.
He's actually perfect for that. Mark Ruffalo is a really talented actor, and he acts so well he can play a bad actor in this.
There is another... He's, like, talking about how, like, their patient escaped, and he says, you act like insanity is catching.
Oh, and they'll giggle at
it's
him.
because... And they giggle at him, but it's because they're, like, watching him like a Hulk because he is the problem. John Carroll Lynch, his character, that's Deputy Warren McPherson. He says, I've never seen a marshal's badge before. Still hasn't. It's fake. Leo says, your boys seem a little on edge. And he says, right now, Marshal, we all are.
Yeah, and they're all holding the guns, just staring him down.
Literally.
But it's perfect because it plays in a way that it's like, oh, they're uneasy.
They
This is
would
a
be.
scary place.
Yeah.
Like, they are. It plays perfectly into my psyche and his psyche to think that they're out to get him when they're not. They're all, like, actually experimenting. Like, the whole thing they're doing is very nice, especially for what the time period is supposed to be. Right?
And then another thing, every time someone says the name Dr. Sheehan, they all look down or, like, look to the side or, like, look at him, which obviously you're not going to get that in the book. But I love that. Literally every time, especially when the one patient says he's easy on the eyes. She, like,
and then she, like,
looks down and then he, like, kind of, like, does this, like, cute little
Is that
smile
conveyed
grimace
in the
at her.
book at all?
I don't
It
think
really
so.
can't be.
Yeah.
But that's, like, just clearly, like, you could show up to shoot this scene the day of and, like, just shoot it one way. But I'm saying this is, like, his genius. I'm going to give Scorsese a lot of credit for him to be like, yeah, look embarrassed. Like, just these little cues that change and make it, like, which is so much more interesting. Yeah.
It was like when they're interviewing like the staff who are there the night Rachel disappeared, the one nurse is just like her eyes are darting back and forth to Mark Ruffalo. And then like you don't see until like it just cuts to Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
That's Thelma there. That's Thelma. That's his Scorsese's longtime editor, Thelma Schumacher.
I have her name written down because I was going to mention her later.
Also
as
the
a shout out. Yeah. Yeah, I think all of those details are so good, and the ones that aren't visual are present in the book, which I love, but I do think it works really well as an adaptation because of that. What do you think about the ending of the book versus the movie? Because this is like my sticking point as to why I prefer one to the other. So specifically, the quote, "This place makes me wonder which would be worse, to live as a monster or die as a good man."
I think that's a nicer kind of like wrap up to the story and kind of like captures everything that this movie and book kind of went through about like reality versus delusion and accepting one versus the other and what might be easier for the person compared to like the institution. I don't know. I still really like kind of how I was just so taken by the book that I didn't believe it. Mm-hmm. I was kind of intrigued on how that would happen.
And so you walked away thinking that the actual U.S. Marshal Teddy was getting lobotomized.
Yeah.
That
I thought
is
they
awesome.
got Teddy. Yeah. And then I was like, no, they didn't.
No,
like, you idiot.
I think the movie definitely makes it more obvious, especially with that quote really cements like where his lucidity is.
Because the movie is sort of a happy ending.
That's how I see it. The book is not. No. The book is fucking sinister.
Which I appreciate that because I think I like that the whole thing is that this institution is actually good. Mm-hmm. Well, for the most part. From the top. The top of the institution is good.
No,
Obviously,
I think Nyring is technically up there.
Kali is good. Sheehan is good. And what they're doing here is good. There are a lot of people that disagree, especially the warden, but like of course he's a cop, so like sorry I touched on cops in the last episode too. Like of course that he sees everything as black and white and he's just evil. We'll talk about that later because I think that's a good scene, but having this like kind of hopeful note of like, hey, it worked, and like Sheehan can at least walk away knowing it worked, but sadly it's just better for Andrew himself.
And I think his last line, it kind of gave the sense that, like, he was almost choosing this. Like, he was done trying to, be in this. Like, this was his choice in a way, which is a nicer wrap-up end.
It's pretty crazy to allow someone to, like, choose that, though. I guess my only issue, because, like, the whole point is he says, I believe if we talk to a person and, like, let them have some agency, that, like, we'll get to know who they are. And he does get agency, and his agency is get a lobotomy. However, that's kind of, in my mind, similar to, like, assisted suicide, which, like, now we got people in Canada that are homeless that get to choose assisted suicide. And I was like, I don't know if we should be allowing that, like, and that's my issue that I have.
I don't think we need to get into the ethics and legality of assisted suicide, because we might have disagreeing opinions on it.
Yeah.
But I like it. I see it as hopeful and person first. And also, like, that's also, you're making assumptions about what happens next, which is just not the text.
For sure.
And we don't know, like, Dr. Sheehan could go up to the group and literally be like, guys, I think he's actually lucid because he said this to me.
Oh, yeah.
But
I do find the last shot of the lighthouse, in my interpretation, is no, he gets this lobotomy. Yeah, it is kind of like a dark ending, but it's still hopeful. It's like a cool mix.
Yeah. That's how I feel about it. And I think I need it in my heart and soul to know that it worked, that all of this hard work, that these two, like, person-first therapists and psychiatrists, that, like, they made a difference, kind of.
They certainly tried their best.
Yeah, and they need to know least. That.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that stuff rocks. Big fan.
Do you have any other thoughts on the book that would be productive to discuss?
I did, and we kind of touched on this too before we started recording, but in the book there's that ferry scene where he almost, they make it seem like he almost escapes. Like, he almost gets off the island. He is almost there, and then he thinks about Chuck and is like, well, no, I have to go back for my partner. Oh, no. And that's why he blew up the car. It wasn't to get to the lighthouse. It was to get onto the ferry because it was about to depart. And I think that, at least to me, was kind of like, oh my gosh, he's gonna get out of here. He is a court-martial. They're keeping him against his will.
Yeah.
And he almost does it, but he goes back for his friend. And then he goes in, that's where they confront him. We're like, no, you're Andrew. This isn't real. All of this is a lie. Yeah.
I feel like I'm okay with that for me not being in the film, just because I don't think this is already a long enough movie. I just simply don't think we have the space for something when it's not actually having a payoff. But either way, I do like that he ends up, instead of making that selfish choice, he, like, is a good person to his core, no matter how, like, hurt or violent he might be. Like, at his core, he cares about other people. I mean, that's why he's suffering so much, is because his guilt, because he gives a shit.
Ooh. Yeah. This is a good transition for themes later, but we have to wait.
Yeah.
I just hold that he is a good person at his core. Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Because I do agree with you. I think that plays in everything.
It does.
I wanted to ask Alex another question just about the filmmaking side. And I know I mentioned it during that it's like there were shots where it was very clearly like green screen and it wasn't very good. Mm-hmm. Did you notice that prior? I was going to
talk about this later.
Oh, all right. Do you need me to stop?
No, it's fine.
Right. Did you notice that prior to me pointing it out? That there were just like scenes that looked very off?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, this is such poor cinematography.
So,
which is someone who probably doesn't, I don't watch movies, so.
Well, a lot of people felt that way. I have seen tweets about people watching this and being like, oh my god, that was such a bad edit. Like,
Thelma does not edit poorly. I would say it is very possible that they were experimenting with blue screen, green screen stuff and not doing a good job.
I don't see that.
I read it now as a fully developed brain that he is doing that on purpose to portray it as everything's fake. Almost like unsettling, or like it's a production. Mm-hmm. And that is what's happening, right? It's production for all of them. So it's almost like theater, right? Now our brains start thinking that, we get confused, and it helps us link the fact that it's all fake. I don't know. Yeah. I like to think of it that way because that makes it seem way cooler. And it's like purposefully bad in some areas.
Like, that was on my list of things I love about this movie, is the editing. Shout out that Thelma Schumacher. Between that, like the crappy green screen, there's like a really disorienting edit at one point where they're talking to the one patient and she raises an empty hand to drink water. It cuts to someone else and cuts back to her actually putting a glass down.
All the continuity errors, I'm certain, are there on purpose. I was mostly talking about the what's it called? Yeah. The green screen. But you're right. The continuity errors are there. They have to be on purpose.
There's also like Leo smoking in one of his dreams, and instead of going out where the smoke goes in. And that's the one I've seen people be like, oh my god, how do they mess that up? And it's like, are you kidding me?
No, that's like...
That one is very on the nose to me. And I think in general, the editing, some of it's kind of choppy, but it's like deliberately so. There's one point where they're talking about, even in the beginning, they're talking about what the wards are. So they go from the person talking and it slides over to the building that they're showing, just like how your eyesight would do that, which I think is really cool. And I like how it edits back and forth between what's happening now and his memories that are relevant to this moment. Like there was a point where, Alex, you were like, does this happen in the book? And it's because it's like out of order from when it was in the book. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I like that choice and I like how it looks.
I was thinking, you talk about like the fake parts are like bad cinematography. It's very clear like the CGI issues and the continuity issues are always when they're on Ashcliff or in his dreams. When they're in, there's a couple other little different things, but when he goes back to say the name of the camp again.
Dachau.
That, like, it's beautiful looking shots. And, like, there are things that he does that play with the idea of memory and how that might look different. But for the most part, like, there's no fake looking stuff there. because that's something that actually did happen. The difference, I think, is the papers flying up behind him, which is just like a cool cinema. It just makes it look cool. And then also the execution scene of the Nazis, which has the camera move along for a really long time as they get killed in a row, which...
That scene we'll talk about more later, I know, because when we talk about the Holocaust of it all, but I think that scene's really interesting too, because we don't actually know if he participated in killing anyone there. Mm-hmm. There's a comment that Dr. Cawley makes later that, like, implies that he's misremembering that.
Huh. Good to know.
Or, like, that he didn't do that.
Gotcha.
Which I also think is interesting when you consider the themes and, like, his guilt. Like,
we have a lot of things to get to then.
Before we get, like, solely into movie talk, I did post on our Instagram. If you don't follow, you should. Horror Hour with the Hannes. And I said, what's your favorite book to film adaptation? Obviously, specifically thinking horror thriller. I'm gonna say it. I think this is the best one. I think it's perfect. Haunted Moonlight podcast said I was also going to say Shutter Island. Friend of the pod Anna said definitely agree, Shutter Island. Paranormal in Pennsylvania said Silence of the Lambs. Olivia, who was our guest for Silence of the Lambs, who hated the book and didn't love the movie, said Silence of the Lambs by default because it's the only one I've read. We also got the answer, The Shining is by far my favorite. That's from Dairyland Frights. He said, it slowly builds tension between the characters. You're taking on a ride with the characters and are to witness their madness. You're helpless as you watch a person slowly go insane. What will he do to the family? Your imagination takes over and floods your mind with terrible thoughts. I think everyone knows the feeling when they're alone and they can't seem to deal with it. Imagine if COVID made us for the rest of our lives have little to no human contact. It was bad enough, but imagine being alone in a house with only you and your slowly decaying mind.
Except his mind's already decayed before he gets there, and that's why I don't like The Shining, but I like the book. But that's besides the point.
Yep. And then, friend of the pod, Bessie. We usually don't know Bessie. Thank you for commenting. We love you for that. She said the adaptation of Rosemary's Baby is highly faithful to the text, but makes great improvements on the suspense. Early on in the book, there's an obvious hint at the threat, which takes out a great deal of the tension. The excellent pacing of the movie, as well as Mia Farrow's acting talents, fixes this issue. Her ability to draw in the audience and show the growing horror on her face is unparalleled. I still highly recommend the book and find it's a great follow-up to the movie to get more info on some of the socio-religious themes. It's also a quick and easy read, which is a huge bonus.
Nice.
I really liked that answer.
Can I name a couple? Or are those all of them?
Go ahead.
All right. Jaws. Better adaptation. Doesn't matter. Everyone knows.
So
Jurassic Park we know is better. Martin Scorsese's Silence. I don't actually know if it's better, but Silence.
Thriller,
it has to be a horror? Sure. Oh, I was saying books that are better than, or movies that are better than the book.
Yeah, but obviously all of our followers went with horror, so.
I don't know if I could say Silence. I didn't read that one either. But.
Yeah, you're an idiot. You didn't read any of those.
And lastly.
You literally didn't read any of those.
Basically, any movie adaptation of the Bible.
You can say
which there are a lot. Am I right, Alex? Am I right?
That is a hot take.
Think about it. Like, come on, you got. What's Prince of Egypt?
This is
the
not
animated
a religious
movie.
podcast.
Rules.
Slowly.
Prince of Egypt.
I'm pretty sure, Last Temptation of Christ, people love. All right, which is another Scorsese movie. Don't
That's the only one I will give you props for because you've read the Bible because Catholic school. Some of CCD. I know you went to CCD as a child, as did I.
A little bit. But come on.
Having read Jurassic Park, even though you wouldn't know, I will agree.
Hell, the musicals about the Bible are better than the Bible. Am I wrong, Joseph?
I'm gonna need you to take a chill pill. Just for a sec.
Jesus Christ Superstar.
Okay, so the movie. Shutter Island, the movie. Alex didn't scream at all. Did you hide at all?
No. I was not scared. Well, I guess when he was in Ward C. That was the creepy part, but I really was not scared during this movie.
We did watch with the lights on, which might have helped, and also you knew what happened, so it's it's not that tense. Well, it's tense, but it's not like the same way if you knew what happened. I actually hid. There's this scene with all of the rats coming out of the cliffside. I can't do that.
I didn't like that.
I didn't look. I simply can't with rodents.
Rats are icky.
I was okay when one came out of the little hole, but then it was 100. I was like, no, I'm not a fan. But I also didn't think this was a super, suspenseful thriller. In the sense of, I wasn't, sitting on the edge of my seat to, get to the next part, maybe because I knew what the next part was. But I don't know if I would have been scared watching this, not seeing, reading the book.
I'll say when they had trailers for this back in the day, the trailers were horrifying. They made this like a horror movie, and then it just wasn't that scary. But it's still very fun. I didn't scream or hide on my last watch.
I mean, I wouldn't expect you to.
I've seen it a lot.
I've seen it at least like 40 times because I'm wildin'. So what do we like about the movie?
Well, I said everything I liked already.
How did you say everything you liked?
No,
we talked about the editing. That's it? That's all you liked?
Mostly.
Oh
no, I'm kidding. I'll let you talk.
So many things.
Sure. Go ahead. Or ask Alex. What did you like?
What did you like about the movie?
Not a movie fan. Does it make you want to watch movies?
No. It was a really long movie.
It was.
I really had to force myself to pay attention. That's a me.
Is TikTok ruining your attention span?
She's not on TikTok, so no.
But my phone is. My favorite things to watch are things that I can play on the background while I'm on my phone.
No, see this.
Hence why we watch The
Bachelor, Drag Race, True Crime Docs.
You need these movies. This is good for you. This was good for your brain.
Yeah,
it was a cognitive exercise.
Yeah. I can read. Like I read for like 4 hours yesterday without taking a break. I don't know what it is about.
The movies interesting?
I don't know what it is about movies that I can't do.
I kind of get it. I think reading takes more of your energy to do.
It's also because you associate it with screens, so you're going to associate phone with TV.
I think so.
But yeah, you have to work to interact with art.
Okay. So the movie.
What was the question?
What did you like?
Oh, I liked seeing the relationship between Chuck and Teddy, Andrew, like on the screen, and kind of how Mark Ruffalo was interacting with him. I thought he was so fun in this movie, and just watching him being this little puppy following like Teddy around the island, being like I could like see him like planting things. I thought he was really good at that.
Yeah, he plants the seeds really well, and I think I associate Mark Ruffalo with being such a teddy bear in general, because I feel like a lot of his big movies where he then ended up for awards, like none of that was before this, if I'm not mistaken. So I feel like my experience with Mark Ruffalo too, pre-Shutter Island, was in like 13 going on 30 and Just Like Heaven. And I was like, oh yeah, teddy bear Mark Ruffalo, and I feel like it just works so well.
He's almost typecast for this type of role. But it's perfect. I'm glad he wrote a letter to Marty, because like it just like makes sense. I feel like this really works, especially for he's playing a hardened deputy or whatever when he's really this like cushy psychiatrist. Sorry, cushy's a little rude, but he is. That's the point. He's working
in a kind of dangerous facility. I'm not going to call him super cushy,
but cushy comparatively,
yeah.
Like, you can tell, like, he really cares about his patient. And, like, he wants so badly for this to work. And he just is, like, trying so hard for him to, like, see reality.
You really get a great performance on it.
Mm-hmm. The end scene where Teddy is basically like, we gotta get out of here, Chuck. And he looks over at the other staff and the, like, little, like, head shake and the facial expression makes me want to cry. I'm not gonna, because I'm watching Shutter Island, but like I feel it in my eyeballs, because it just like
I could almost like see him like sink into this role of Chuck, which who knows how many times he's played this, and he's just like, all right, yeah, we're doing this again, and just like is so sad.
Yeah, I love that. I think all the performances in this movie are really good.
Yeah, I was gonna say Leo's is maybe average for him. I don't think it's anything.
But I think you're also comparing Leo's performance to Leo's performances. And is that fair?
Saying. Yes, because I would do the same thing with Scorsese, which is why this movie is like disappointing to some.
Well, we're judging this movie
I know,
on this movie.
It's hard. I'm doing my best.
And also, I guess, compared to the book. But like, it's like the movie and the book, but not Leo's other work or Scorsese's other work.
Yes,
like, I think we can separate that a little bit.
I'll try.
I do agree. We've seen Leo do a lot more than this. But that scene where he, like, sees his kids in the lake
it's
and
really
he swims
good.
out to them, and then he shoots his wife, like...
He has...
Oof.
He's got great facial expressions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
like
a woof.
I feel like I named a lot of the stuff I like. I think it's a good ride. My big things I love are the fact that they telegraph the twist. So I think that this movie really rewards multiple viewings.
Yes.
And I think it's actually not... I might have said this another time, that I don't love it on its first watch. I think the first time I watched it, I found it to be, like, fine, and it's on more and more viewings is where I think it actually gets good. Which maybe is a flaw? I don't know.
Think it's
I don't know
flaw.
what I'm going to call it.
I mean, I liked it enough the first time to rewatch it,
Yeah.
but I also feel like that with a lot of thrillers where there's a twist, I'm like... Whoa, what did I miss?
Yeah,
and with
time
a
to
movie,
rewind.
I think it's easier to rewind and rewatch. With a book, I'm not going to necessarily do that because I probably spent several hours on it versus a movie, I spent like 2 hours. So, and it takes less effort to rewatch a movie. But I think at least the first time for me, clearly, if I've watched it so many times, it did enough for me to get back on the horse. And that's one of the things that I like a lot, is how obvious it is and rewarding it is on multiple viewings, and you don't always get that from films. Like, there are films that definitely lose their magic when you watch them too many times.
I'll say another thing I like, and it just goes back to Marty again, and it's just that, like, you take him for granted when you watch some of the stuff, where I remember walking over to watch the shot of him seeing the Nazi that had, like, tried to kill himself, but was just, like, laying there. And you have this shot of, like, Leo looking down at him with the papers flying in the background. And it's just, like, this really upsetting and moving shot that's all just set up in silence and with the way the camera is placed. It's just, like, I don't know. He's just so talented. And, like, you're not going to get that with a lesser director. So, but again, you take it for granted when I'm like, oh, it's a Scorsese movie. Of course I'm going to, like, of course just the way the camera moves is going to make me feel things.
Yeah. I'm going to also give it to them for having good comedic timing. Like, this isn't, I wouldn't be like, wow, Shutter Island is such a funny movie. But when they do have those moments, I think they work really well without decreasing the tension or the sadness or whatever other feelings you're having. I think they're, like, well placed. And some of the lines are directly from the book, but again, I think the tonal difference, like, it could have fucked it up, but it doesn't. Yeah. For example, like, I know Alex and I giggled at 1,000 plants with thorns as big as my dick. And also, when they're talking, he's like, who does 67 mean? And Mark Ruffalo goes, fuck if I know. And Dr. Colley says, I have to say, that's quite close to my clinical conclusion. And I love that so much. So, I don't know, I feel like those moments are, like, well placed and well done. I also think the sound design in this movie goes hard as fuck. Oh, yeah.
That also plays into the trying to tell you the secret. This whole movie is, like, trying to tell you the secret the whole time.
Fun fact, this film does not have an original score, which you might have noticed. It's Scorsese's longtime collaborator, Robbie Robertson, which is also... I love the alliteration. How fun. He, ensemble pieces previously recorded to use for the film.
Very cool. It sounds like a Zimmer score, because it's all...
It does, but, like, those are existing pieces, and, like, the main piece that I think you hear a couple times is Mahler, just, like, a famous. So, yeah, I think it's fun, and I think the sound is really well placed, and it does make the beginning especially really tense with the music.
All right, let's talk about some stuff we didn't like. If anything.
Alex, anything
as
you
the movie
not
hater,
like, besides maybe it's too long?
Yeah, I didn't like how long it was. I'm not a big gore fan, so when I did see, like, all this blood, I was like, I don't get why this is placed here, or I also don't watch a lot of things with gore, so I think it took me aback. It's like, oh no, like, this is what this movie is, actually. This is what it was marketed as, so I understand why this is here. I didn't love it. What else did I not like? No, like, I overall liked it.
Hey!
Yeah, I don't know what I can big time complain about. other than what I said before, which is that I'm going to compare it to other work by directors and actors. I don't want to complain that it's long, because I feel like the movie breathes and it needs to. And like I feel like there's nothing I would remove or any scene I would want.
I don't know if it would make sense if they took anything out.
Or even if you sped it up, it wouldn't hit the same way. Like it has to be. Mm-hmm. It's like it is a noir, or it's a fake noir, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's just like it just doesn't have the same vibes that I think some of his other movies do.
Yeah, I think
which
it's
it can't.
different.
It's like not the same like level of like fun, and it doesn't haul ass the way I think in terms of pacing, which is fine. Again, it's like that's the point.
I think if you're a film liker and you know Scorsese, you knew going in it was going to be a long movie.
But most of his movies that are long move like...
I don't...
Think of Goodfellas. Think of Wolf of Wall Street. Wolf of Wall Street moves...
Wolf of Wall Street isn't running. I feel like I have the same impatience.
Oh, really? I feel like Wolf of Wall Street's sprinting.
Wolf of Wall Street is just one crazy thing after another.
So
I feel like eventually I get kind of fatigued by it, but it's a great movie. Like, no, I'm not going to complain about that.
Both of those movies, Goodfellas and Wolf of Wall Street, actually sprint into a wall. Like a screaming stop.
Wolf of Wall Street 100%
So does Goodfellas. Think about that. It just goes to the trial.
I've seen that list, so...
True.
Yeah.
Silence is slower like this, and Silence is probably my favorite of his, so...
Why?
But I gotta watch more.
You picked, like, the movie that, like,
2017. Absolute masterpice of a movie.
I can't complain because 13-year-old me would be mad at me.
Yeah, you wrote essays on this movie.
So, I can't. Oh, Matt, I was saying to Alex earlier, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you, in 8th grade, when I discovered this movie and was in love with it, my dad, like, let me download some movies to my phone, and Shutter Island was one of them. And in 8th grade, during, like, silent reading, I would read, but then I'd also watch this on my phone, and I felt so devious, because it was rated R, and I was watching it in middle school, in school. Like,
wow.
Oh, that's crazy.
What a cool kid.
I was so cool, obviously. You could just tell from everything about me.
I'm trying to remember when I started watching horror movies, probably 8th grade.
Not that this is even horror, like... I just was like, it's rated R. Shh.
See, yeah, my mom couldn't wait to show me the rated R movie. She'd be like, oh, this is one we can watch, you know, because she'd already seen it. Be like, you gotta see this one.
My mom just loved Leo, so whenever there was, like, any Leo, it was like, yeah, sure. Like, we saw Django in theaters because we were both like,
that was a bit of fun.
Leo, yeah. And that was fairly explicit.
It's just violent, but...
When did that come out?
After Inglourious Bastards.
Well, yeah, this came out 2 years later, so I was, like, 15 for that one. And my mom and I went and saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a good time. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to complain. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard. Let's talk about themes. I feel like that's critical to this movie, and I have lots of thoughts, because there's a lot of stuff we could talk about.
I have, like, so many pages of notes, and we've already been talking for so long. I'm so sorry.
All right, you start.
Okay. I love the psych of it all. I think there's so much. This isn't necessarily like a theme, but I just think there are so many things in this film that represent something else or are like tied back to psychoanalytic theory, which I think is always fun. So these things will connect to the main theme of grief and loss, and by association, guilt as well for the role that he plays in his wife's loss. But he's always seen, like when he starts, he has the Band-Aid on his head. And then when we see shots of Andrew Laeddis in his dream, there's a giant scar running down his face, which is representative, very clearly, of his broken psyche. And that's not a new trick. That's been in film forever. The Band-Aid being correlated with broken brain.
Well, the Band-Aid also is a noir thing.
Yeah.
I know Chinatown was
well, that's one. What yep. Where I think that's inspired by as well.
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah. I also love "you have excellent defense mechanisms" is a quote that Nyring says to him, because he is basically like, in that scene, he's just like quipping back. They're like, who were you raised by? And he's like, wolves. And they're like, ha ha ha, you have great defense mechanisms. But I love that because defense mechanisms is a psychoanalytic term. It's actually not Freud, it's Anna Freud, so that's fun. But defense mechanisms are essentially unconscious psychological processes that we use to defend against, like, anxiety or other unacceptable feelings. So there are a bunch of different defense mechanisms.
And which one's he using?
There are two main ones. He is the king of repression, obviously. That's like the whole thing, is he's unconsciously blocking all of these unpleasant emotions, which is what repression is. And obviously he's repressed this everything about his life before being here, besides being a marshal and being at war. Like, those are the only things that are kept. Like, his relationships, his kids. That's all repressed. And he is also pretty sweet at projection, because projection is attributing one's own characteristics or feelings to another person. So he is projecting all of his feelings about himself and his guilt and all of his hatred of, like, what he did onto a whole new person, Andrew Laeddis. He's, like, made up a person, which is even more intense.
And he does the same thing with all the people in at Ashcliff, calling them all prisoners and, like, being disgusted by them when really he's disgusted by himself.
And I think prisoners, when we think about that with, like, the psych end of things, is he's kind of like a prisoner in his own mind. So, of course, he's referring to all of them as a prisoner, not a patient. Also, like, he's repressed that he was ever a patient, so that tracks as well. I think that is super fun.
Yeah.
And all of that, like I said, comes back to the grief loss and how that relates to his guilt in the situation.
So, do you have more?
Do you want to respond to the grief loss part of things?
Oh, no, I agree with everything you say. I don't know what else I could say. You ran with that one.
I'm sorry. I had a lot of notes. Alex, do you want to follow up to any of that? Like, any more that you're seeing with those themes?
I don't know. You may touch on, this might be on your list, but just kind of going into, like, the grief and the psyche about it. Like, one of the stages of grief is denial, and he's just living in that denial and not accepting that this had happened to him, that he had any part in it, and turning it into this whole other person where he's repressing and projecting. And
he's very much in the denial and anger stages. Man has not hopped into anything else.
No acceptance anywhere.
I think, like,
no bargaining either.
He skips bargaining, and then later he kind of gets to the depression bargaining, and then hops maybe right back out of it. In the book, he definitely hops right back out of it, back over to denial. In the movie, we don't know, obviously. Yeah, I think that's very, very prevalent. I think a lot of his dreams, too, connect back to this. Like, his daughter shows up in one of his dreams and says, "You could have saved me. You could have saved all of us." And that's obviously his guilt for not getting his wife help, by not getting her help, that ultimately led to them dying. So they're like, you could have saved our lives, and you didn't get her help, so you didn't. And she also, the Rachel Solando in his dream, says, "Give me a hand here," and he picks up the child and carries the kid into the water in his dream because he feels like he contributed to their death. Is how I read
the imagery is crazy in this movie.
Yeah.
When you were talking about that, that was the scene that I thought of, where he, takes his living child and then puts her to his death, because that was his role in his head. Yeah. He killed them.
It's so sad. Yeah, the dreams are very representative. I think the dreams are so fun. There's also, like, which is a different, it's not really to a theme, but Chuck shows up in that second dream and says, "Clock's ticking, my friend, you're running out of time." And he is like, Teddy thinks is like, "I'm running out of time to find her," but it's really like, you're running out of time to realize the truth before you get a lobotomy, Teddy. So smart.
At one point, it's like Dolores in his dream is like, Andrew Laeddis is here, like. I think her being like, "Don't, like, let go of me," is kind of like him trying to hold on to this delusion and not accepting the reality of what he did. Yes. Yeah. She said, but then she also says, "Teddy, you have to let me go." And like you said, he literally says, "I can't." Because he just can't face it. He's not ready to yet. I love that. Was it George Noyce? Yes. Love that last name, by the way. Noyce. I feel like when
noise.
Exactly. It's like a Jersey noise. But he has this delusion in the cell where he's talking to Dolores and George is like, you have to let her go. You have to let her go. And I think he's like, I can't. And then that's when George is like, you're never getting out of here. And Teddy thinks that it's because he's trapped on this island when George is like, no, you are still stuck in this.
George is his boy, too. Like, they're like buds, and then he beat the shit out of him.
But not. I don't know.
I assumed that they were like buds, and then Noyce called him his real name, and he beat the shit out of him.
I think Teddy, between like the movie and the content from the book, like thinks Noyce is his buddy. But we're not really getting anything that from Noyce that would show that is the case.
Enough Noyce thinks that Teddy's his buddy.
I don't think so. But Teddy definitely is like, I was trying to help you, my man.
Yeah. Trying to get you out of here.
Yeah, there's a little bit more of that, like, in the book, but I don't know if it's worth getting into.
This movie is very pro-mental health, which I think is very cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's great to take that stance. And I like that. All right, what other mental health ones do we have, or do we want to talk about the big elephant in the room of this movie?
What's the big elephant?
The big elephant is it's a terrible way for me to put it, but I mean it's woven through the entire film, which is the Holocaust.
Tell us more.
I understand that it is like a big theme in the movie, but I cannot figure out what it's trying to say. Maybe we need to like chat through it. Because it's shown multiple times him being part of the liberation of a camp and basically finding this, which again, if you know the history of World War II, we had no idea these camps even existed. So these soldiers just stumbled across this atrocity, did not know how to handle the emotions. He basically just lets that one Nazi suffer there because he's like, yeah, you're not getting out easy. And then lines all of them up in what I would say is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which is maybe a little dark, but I just think it's really well crafted, which is where they like shoot all of the Nazis at the camp. And we're brought back to that multiple times, and that's like part of his psyche is remembering taking part in this like slaughter, as he calls it, of these Nazis or German soldiers, whoever they were. Both, I don't know. And I feel like it's supposed to be linked to how he feels about killing his wife. Right? Do you see it that way, Hannah?
Can I read you a note that I wrote in my presentation in high school?
Yes. Maybe your high school you is smarter than me.
This is where I think, like, it starts the theming, and then it obviously gets more nuanced from there. I wrote, Andrew Laeddis fought during the war and returned home as a war hero to his wife, Dolores, and his kids. However, his wife, Dolores, was mentally ill. It seems Andrew knew this, but possibly PTSD after the war caused him to be distant, and he didn't realize exactly how unwell she was. And to, like, elaborate on that, like, I think right off the bat, regardless of whatever war it was, when you are struggling with your own mental health, it might cause you to not be as aware of, like, how your actions are impacting other people, or, like, he might not have had the fucking energy, which as fucked as that is, and, like, yeah, he's gonna live with that guilt for that, but, like, he might not have had the energy to, like, deal with it in the appropriate way because he had his own trauma. So I think we start there, that any trauma that he was going in with was significant to, like, his journey here. But I also think the correlation is that he doesn't only feel guilty for not saving his children, he feels guilty for not saving all of the people at the camp who died.
Yes.
So,
but sorry, let me jump in. They try to get retribution or try to like feel better about it by slaughtering the Nazis or killing his wife, but doing those did not bring the children back or like the Jewish people in the camp back.
Yeah, like that's not going to bring it back. But I also think, like we said, he might not have actually shot anyone, but because he has so much guilt over these other murders or murder that he committed with his wife, and he sees himself as such a man of violence, as do obviously staff at the hospital with that whole "we are men of violence" scene. I think he might be like misremembering or like putting that on himself too, because he just has so much guilt about his past actions. Like we don't know. But
I guess that's where I guess that makes sense of like hey, lining these guys up and shooting all them is not going to change what they've already done. And same with like killing his wife is not going to bring the children back, and you can feel that guilt. I think where the movie loses me is, even though that scene is like pretty horrific, I find it very hard to be sympathetic towards Nazis. And
I don't think it's asking you to be, though.
I don't think it is, but it makes me feel like, nah, did the right thing. And then if I were to carry that logic, it'd be like, nah, he did the right thing killing his wife then, too.
Well, I think
that's where I
think you
have a disconnect.
could also, like, it's really rough to say this, but I think in his brain, he could justify it, right? Like, at the time.
He could say,
because
it was...
she was suffering. She was ill. She says, Teddy, you have to let me go.
And then...
I think it's even more obvious, like, in the book, that he feels like he's putting her... Like, one, he can't live with it, but two, he is putting her out of his misery. So I can see...
And then he does the same thing to himself by getting lobotomy.
Yeah, so I feel like...
So really happens, the same thing happens 3 times. But if we look at it this way...
Just all of this.
Yeah. But if we look at it this way, we also are saying, okay, rounding up those dudes and killing them didn't bring any of the people they killed back. Killing his wife didn't bring his children back. And lobotomizing himself and choosing that is not going to bring his wife and children back.
No, it won't.
So that's another... It goes each way, where it's like that we're... Yeah, it's not... I don't know. Maybe I am supposed to feel conflicted. It's hard for me to talk about it. I'm like...
Some quotes that I really liked when we think about the Holocaust scenes. One, his daughter says, "You should have saved all of us." And again... She is talking about, like, if you helped Mom, we would not be dead. But it's also in the context of that scene where they are bodies, like, in a pile of corpses. So it's, you should have saved us. And there's later in that same dream, she says, "Why didn't you save me?" And he says, "I couldn't get there in time." Which I think is, like, that connection between, not only did he not get there to save them for drowning, but Americans didn't get to the camps on time to save people's lives.
They didn't know that they existed.
But that doesn't mean there wasn't guilt behind it.
Sure. Yeah.
I do. The same way that he didn't know his wife was going to kill his children. He didn't know that he had to get there.
Yeah, he didn't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that is what it's about, because I've seen people like talk about this movie on Twitter, and they were like, basically say, no, this movie is specifically about the Holocaust, and that is its main like function.
I don't know if I would go that far.
No, I'm getting a Holocaust movie. It's definitely like a key part of like who he is as a person, and that experience shaped the events of his life afterward. Okay. I think it was almost kind of like what Hannah was saying, like he had PTSD from serving in the war, like so many veterans do. There probably was no help. They probably didn't know PTSD was a thing in the 50s. He was drinking, ignored signs that his wife was struggling. So I think she set fire to their apartment, and then he moved them out to be like, fresh air will help you. Yeah. It's fine. That's the answer. Yeah. So then look at the water. And then she drowns the kids.
So fun.
No, I think that all makes sense, though.
And I think then when you position that as like that being his experience, then of course he is hallucinating about experiences going on Ashcliff, on Shutter Island. Like, you would have that fear as someone who fought the Nazis would. Like,
he's worried that the experimentation is happening there. Yeah. And so his like psyche has got convinced of that. Yeah. But it's interesting because, like we said, what they're doing there is good. They're not doing, other than lobotomies, I guess.
We're not pro-lobotomies.
Yeah. I guess they still do. Do they still do lobotomies?
Not like they were doing.
Not like they were?
I don't really know.
Do you think, like, in that time period, it probably was a semi-common...
Yeah, JFK's sister got lobotomy. Like,
so, even though we don't love lobotomies, it was very much part of, like, treating the mentally ill. Or people with mental illness.
We're taking a stance against lobotomy. It's very brave of us.
I don't know.
So brave.
I don't know when lobotomies were officially banned in the U.S. I mean, they are banned in the U.S. as well as a number of countries, but I don't know how recent that was, which is why my answer was like, I don't know. And when I just tried to Google it to like look, the first thing that showed up was an article saying, as of April 2022, lobotomies are no longer performed. And I'm like, 2022.
That's a little too close for comfort.
When were lobotomies?
All right, we don't... Either way, I think that's what I've got for themes. Were there other themes you guys want to talk about? This movie's littered with them.
One that I didn't pick up on until you mentioned it while we were watching the movie was that water is real and fire is fake, which changed everything
I should have said
for me in that moment. Maybe this movie was life-changing for me, Matt.
I hope.
But it really helped piece together like so many moments in this movie where it was like, oh yeah, like you kind of got the sense that it was a delusion. But it was fun to see how like those themes were playing into it.
Him in the cave with the fire, talking to Dolores,
or even
Rachel.
him with the
Rachel.
matches.
Yeah.
In Ward C. Yeah.
The matches.
Well, I think we could definitely talk about fire, like you guys were saying.
I was going to say the reason it's fake, though, is because he's convinced his wife died in a fire. That's the fake reality where really she drowned the children, which is water's the real reality.
I actually wrote that in my presentation
Whoa.
from high school.
Oh my
you're
gosh.
so smart.
Direct quote, fire is frequently shown when Teddy's having delusions and moments of, quote, insanity.
Wow.
And I was like,
did you look that
oh
up on
my
Google?
God.
Did you figure that up on your own?
I think I figured it out on my own.
Holy
What a
shit.
smart girl. Oh
But
my
who's
gosh.
to say,
Get
really?
this girl a Pulitzer Prize.
She was gifted in school, guys.
Yeah.
Literally. But he does say, and I meant to shout this out way earlier. We were on an episode of the Horror Lab, and we covered Shutter Island with our buddy on that show, and we did
Check
talk
him out,
about
the Horror
this.
Lab and Red Tree.
And yeah, he also has the podcast Red Tree House, which is popping off. That's more like true crime, spooky-esque. And Horror Lab is talking about movies, like we do. But we talked about this theme there as well, and so if you listen to both episodes, you'll hear me say the exact fucking thing. But one of the quotes is, it was the smoke that got her, not the fire, so that's important. And I read that as like, it wasn't directly his or her illness that killed her. It was like the result of that.
Oh, yeah, so the fire is the fire is his inaction, the smoke is...
Like the fire is the, quote, insanity. The fire is like, what happened, like when there's smoke, that means there was fire.
Yes. Very cool. We'll go listen to that episode. We don't have to get too much into that theme.
Yeah.
We are at almost at an hour and 6, so...
Oh my goodness. Okay, favorite scenes.
All right, I'll go with mine. There. I did say I really like any of the scenes that... I say it like Dachau. I don't know, something about they're really unsettling and upsetting and
so German folks.
Very cool. Really I will also say I really, really like the scene with Ted Levine, whatever his name is. I think I spelled it wrong when I wrote it. Which is where he picks him up and basically tells him that it's all fake before we realize. And it's just like, yeah, you're just a bad dude. And like there are just bad people and you were like, he completely disagrees with what's going on there and just straight up like tells him that it's like, yeah, this is all bullshit.
Well, I think what he's saying is like confirming some of Teddy's worst fears.
Yes.
He's like, we are both men of violence.
Yeah.
And Teddy's like, I don't want to be violent. Like, I'm repressing that.
Oh, and I think the warden is totally wrong.
Yeah.
But I really like this scene of where everyone else has been playing into the fantasy of this one guy is just like, he's just a piece of shit. Like,
just gonna throw it out that this scene in the book has a lot of racial slurs that I didn't feel like needed to be there.
Yeah, it seems a little extreme. I mean, the warden's a piece of shit.
Yeah, that came across.
But there are people, like, this movie has a lot of people that feel differently about mental health playing different characters. Like, the warden does not believe in it. Clearly, Colley and Sheehan are, like, all about it. You got the German guy who's kind of, like, on the fence. There's definitely, like, it's all, like, at least those people on the spectrum of it.
Yeah.
But that scene is just dark and I like it.
Any favorite scenes, Alex?
I really liked when the lightning is going on, the Dr. Colley was like, oh, do you have a migraine? And before that happens, like the lightning flashes are so unrealistically bright. And as someone who gets migraines, I'm like, oh, he's photosensitive.
Yep.
And then that's exactly what the doctor said. I'm like, oh, that's so fun. But I think it also highlights that, like, you're really seeing all of this through
his eyes.
Yes.
His eyes
we're seeing
and
the
his
delusions
perspective.
Too. Yep. Which is why we're seeing this. We're seeing the staging. We're seeing the fake green screen. You're right. Maybe the movie did change your life.
Maybe
you're seeing
it did.
things. I know.
Oh my gosh.
This is exciting.
I have a lot of favorite scenes, so...
We have to give you some homework, and then we can talk about other movies and be like, what'd you think of this?
Start a new podcast of showing Alex movies.
Oh my god.
I'm just
love
kidding.
it.
No, I would do it.
Well, that's why we love having people that don't like horror on the podcast, because I think there is some of that of like...
I think we're good at picking things they would like. Except for Casey
Olivia.
and Olivia.
Casey picked her own movie,
that's
so I'm
right.
going to give that... I gave her options, and I gave her like 4 or 5 options. She picked the movie and then hated it.
We specifically picked movies Preston will hate because he's so scared. That's
but then
funny.
he hates them.
He hates them, which means they're like actually good.
No, the first one he gave like a 9.
Oh, the second one he gave like a 4, and it was so good.
Because it was disturbing. Okay, my favorite scenes, I love the ending, like I've said, and I like how it differs from the book. I really like that second dream that I pulled quotes about, where it shows like the Dachau imagery, him picking up his daughter saying like, you could have saved me. I really like...
Every dream sequence is heartbreaking.
They're really sad, and I think that one I really like the like analysis of the dialogue, so I really like that. And I think the scene where we see what actually happened between him and his wife and his children is heartbreaking. So I like it. Like, I hate it, but I like it. It makes me feel things.
This whole movie makes you feel things. It's good.
Yeah.
We gotta rate it now, though.
Yeah.
It's time. And then we're gonna think of movies to give to Alex.
Okay. What's your rating, Matt?
I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 is my ranking. It is good. It's not incredible. It's not amazing. There's a lot of really cool things I like about it, though.
I think that's fair, but it made me feel like I got punched in the chest because of how attached I am to it. But that's like a me problem.
Yeah,
I think an 8 is fair.
I've said it like 10 times. I'm definitely comparing it to his other work, and that's my issue. But I've been at the highs. I've been at the mountaintop.
Alex,
I think I'd give it an 8 out of 10, like a B.
There we go.
I liked it. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it. I don't think I will ever watch it again.
What do you rate the book?
Probably. I think I gave the book a 4 out of 5. And for me, that is, I would recommend the book to someone else. I don't know if anyone would be asking me for a movie recommendation. I would say Shutter Island.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
All right, Hannah.
I don't know what to do because I think 8 is really fair in the grand scheme of film.
Stop being a coward and give it a score.
I'll give it a 9 out of 10 because
trying to justify her answers.
I always do that. I can't help but to do that.
You said this whole time how much you love this movie.
She's worried someone's going to judge her on a podcast where you're not getting comments.
I love this movie, but there are movies that I think are better. I
need you to be more hyperbolic so we can put this on TikTok. You can be like, Shutter Island is Scorsese's best movie. Prove me wrong.
That's crazy.
Like that, but that engagement bait. Come on. We gotta learn YouTube Shorts, all right? Everyone follow us on YouTube. Our YouTube Shorts are popping.
I'm gonna snip that. You saying it.
Shutter Island is Scorsese's best movie. I don't believe that at all.
Yeah, I cut that part out then.
Nope, staying in.
Yeah, I don't believe that, and that's why I can't give it better. And there's movies on this podcast that I think as a total piece of art are better, but I love it a lot.
I know.
It's a personal 9.7.
I ask this every episode, but can we watch Killers of the Flower Moon? That's a very horrific movie.
It's not a horror movie. It's not a horror movie. It's a drama.
It is.
It's really sad,
It is horrifying.
It's
very good. That's his most recent movie that came out last year.
I need to read it.
Movie 1,000 years long.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 3.5 hours, and it rules. I mean, rules is not... It's really good. It is very, very upsetting. Highly recommend, though.
I just saw someone reading the book, and I was like, oh, that has to be an 800-page book. It doesn't seem that long of a book. How did they get 3.5 hours out of it?
Watch the movie, and you'll understand.
Alex cannot sit through that.
No, it'd be good
for you.
All right.
Casey did read that book and said it was really good. So then when they were doing their annual Oscars watch through, they watched it. Then I was like, why didn't you watch Oppenheimer. And she was like, that's too long. And I was like,
it might be 3 hours and 40.
Miss Ma'am?
It's awesome.
I think Killers of the Flower Moon might be almost an hour longer.
Than Oppenheimer? Yeah.
At least a half hour, if not more.
Well,
anyway, we love Scorsese.
We watch Cape Fear. That's Scorsese's other horror movie.
Scorsese-Leo collabs.
True. De Niro's in Cape Fear.
Well, everyone loves De Niro, Scorsese collabs. That tracks. That's his most collaborated with actor. I think Leo's number 2.
Well.
Because De Niro has
Marty, give us another horror movie, man. I know you're making as many. He's cranking them out because he's old. But we got room for another horror movie in there.
I love him. Everyone go look up the videos that his granddaughter posts of him. They're so cute. Because you're like, wow, Scorsese is this like auteur. What's that word?
Auteur?
Auteur. I put a sound in there that was wrong.
No, he's a goofball.
But then he's like this little grandpa. And I love that for him.
All right.
Anyway, watch this movie. Watch a Scorsese movie.
I'm out of here. Alex, thank you for joining us. You gonna plug anything? You don't have anything to plug.
I got nothing to plug. Wear your helmet. Wear your seatbelt. I'm a trauma OT. I don't want to be seeing you.
She's on Storygraph. We can put that in the caption if you want. Woo!
All right.
My cat has
We're
an
out of
Insta
here.
that she doesn't post on.
I didn't know your cat had an Insta.
It's because I don't post on it.
Alex, get on it. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Horror Hour with the Hannas. Make sure to listen to future episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you can find podcasts. You can follow us at Horror Hour with the Hannas on TikTok and Instagram for more content. If you like the podcast, please follow and leave a review on your favorite podcasting app. Happy hauntings!